Hey, what's up, Sugar Bushes? Welcome back to another fun old true crime segment. I tell you what now. The story we have today is absolutely brutally disgusting and extremely triggering. So, I know in my past videos I was like, if you are sensitive to this topic, this, that, and the other, don't watch ahead. But I cannot stress this enough. In today's video, if you are sensitive to the subject of rape and torture and things of that nature, I don't continue to watch. The brutality of this man's crimes are so disgusting and horrible that one of the investigators in the case actually took her own life after watching the videotapes he kept. So before we get started, I'm streaming on Twitch a lot more now. People keep asking me to do makeup while I do these, but I don't really want to feel like I'm copying Bailey Sarian. I think that's her name. But if that's something you want to see, let me know. But I do enjoy doing my makeup. I just don't want to feel like I'm jocking somebody's niche, you know what I'm saying? But anywhoozle, again, last warning, it's about to get f***ed up in here. So we are talking about the Toy Box Killer. Who's the Toy Box Killer, you ask? I'm gonna tell you. So March 19th, 1999, 22-year-old Cynthia Vigil is hooking in a parking lot in Albuquerque, New Mexico. While she's making her money, all of a sudden, a man puts her in handcuffs claiming to be an undercover cop and says she is being arrested on charges of prostitution. But what's about to happen to her will make her wish that she was actually going to prison. So he puts her in the back of his car, says she's under arrest, tells her to stop fighting, and takes her off to where she is introduced to the toy box. What's the toy box, you're asking? Well, we'll get to that here in a minute. First, we need to introduce you to our undercover cop. He goes by the name of David Parker Ray, aka the Toy Box Killer. So David Parker Ray was born in Belen, New Mexico in 1939. Not a whole lot is known about his childhood. It is known that he mainly went to live with his grandparents and that his dad would visit him regularly, but his dad would beat him the entire time he was visiting. His dad would also give him sadomasochist pornography magazines, and it said that's what put David Parker Ray into this lifestyle he became so known for. Now, his life with his grandparents weren't peachy keen either. His grandpa was extremely strict. It was, the 50s and such, and what we consider abuse now was just called being strict then. His grandpa had these impossible standards that he had to live up to and he could never meet. So, of course, it caused a lot of emotional trauma. Now, is childhood emotional trauma an excuse for being such a piece of shit? Absolutely not. Now, it's said to believe that Mr. David Parker Ray started his killing spree or crime spree in the mid-1950s, but that's just a speculation. None of this really came to light until Miss Carrie Vigil made her escape from him. He was a mechanic in the Army, and he had an honorable discharge. Once he got out, he began running around with he grew his hair out long and began running around with like a hippie commune. Like, there's speculation of a story that when he was traveling with his hippie commune, they shacked up with another couple, and the woman that David Parker Ray was with confided in the other couple that, he took my virginity, I'm pregnant with this kid, and 2 days later she just is gone, and all of her things are gone. And when they asked David about it, he says, she's a free spirit, man. She just wanted to go where the wind was going to take her. And the couple was very suspicious about that, because why would this woman who's freshly pregnant and in love with David just leave? So it's speculated that he did not want to have that burden of children and murdered her. But eventually David did have a child. Glenda Jessie Ray was the name of his daughter, and she was also an accomplice. So now we're going to start talking about the victims, the toy box, and the emotional, physical, and psychological torture that David Parker Ray and his accomplice, as well as his daughter, inflicted. Now, it's hard to believe that a woman would allow him to do what he did to other women, and he also had an accomplice that was his girlfriend. He indoctrinated his daughter into this lifestyle, the sadomasochist lifestyle is what he called it. He also called them his hang-ups. So at one point, David's daughter actually tried to turn him in for what he was doing after discovering the tapes and various other incriminating evidence she found. But when she turned him in, he willingly went and talked to the FBI, and technically, since he really hadn't committed a crime that they could prove, he was let go. So after his daughter tried to turn him in for what he was doing, and she saw that the law wasn't going to do anything about it, that was the last time she would ever cooperate with police. She said, "F it, I guess I'm going to get in the family business as well." Now, David was a traveling mechanic is what he did, because he was a mechanic in the military, but he also worked as a mechanic doing jobs here and there. He also made a lot of his money videotaping the rapes and tortures of the women that he abducted and selling them off to his close-knit circle, as well as when he was done with certain women, after keeping them captive, he would take them over and sell them into human trafficking. David and his daughter had a relationship that most would consider odd. It was quite weird because his accomplice, Cindy Hindi, was in a relationship with his daughter as well, and they were in this weird love triangle thing, and then eventually David and Cindy started spending more time together and became an item. But David's daughter, Jessie, did have a child that most speculated was David's child, and that there was some kind of incestual relationship going on between them. So basically, it becomes a family business to kidnap and torture women and sell them into slavery and trafficking, as well as making snuff films and things of that nature. So now we're going to get into the victims, the suspected victims, the toy box, and the emotional, physical, and psychological torture that David Parker Ray and his accomplices put his captives through. I'm going to tell you right now, this is really f***ed up. Like I said before, this, if you did not heed my warnings in my last videos, I'm telling you right now, this is on a whole nother level. These atrocities, the brutality of these crimes, these rapes, this torturing is utterly disgusting. So this is your warning, and this is your only warning, and then we're going to dive right in. So when David would capture his victims and put them in the toy box, he would use a very powerful concoction of drugs. And then when they would wake up, they would be disoriented and not know where they are. They would be in a dark room, and the first thing they would hear would be a tape that David made to play to all of his captives, that basically gives them in full detail what was going to happen to them during their stay in his toy box. I'm going to play a couple minutes of audio from that tape. I'm going to stitch some of it together so I can show you just how brutal the things that happened to these women were. I'm going to also put down in the description of this video a link to a video where it plays the actual tape. If you don't want to listen to that, you can read it. I will link a WordPress as well to where it's the transcript of the tape. It's like 5 parts. The actual tape itself is like almost an hour long. So I'm going to stitch up some pieces and play them for you.
Warning. The following video contains strong language which may be offensive to some viewers or inappropriate for children. The content within this video is intended for mature audiences only.
Hello there, bitch. Are you comfortable right now? I doubt it. Wrists and ankles chained, gagged, probably blindfolded. You are disoriented and scared too, I would imagine. Perfectly normal under the circumstances. For a little while, at least, you need to get your shit together and listen to this tape. I don't know the details of your capture because this tape is being created July 23rd, 1993 as a general advisory tape for future female captives. The information I'm going to give you is based on my experience dealing with captives over a period of several years. You probably think you're going to be raped, and you're fucking sure right about that. It's going to take a lot of adjustment on your part, and you're not gonna like it a fucking bit. I've been raping bitches ever since I was old enough to jerk off and tie the little girls' hands behind their back. You'll be taken into the living room and put on the floor on your hands and knees, naked. Your wrists, ankles, knees, and hips will be strapped to a metal frame to hold your body in that position. The frame is designed for doggy fucking. I'm going to rub canine breeder's musk on your back, the back of your neck, and on your sex organs. Now I have 3 dogs.
So along with the tape that he would play for his victims, David Parker Ray also kept a list of commandments, so to speak, for torturing and raping his victims. I also put a post bin in the description where you can read those, but I'm going to read them off to you because it's only 18, but I'll put some timestamps so you can skip ahead as well. So number 1 is the new female captive should be gagged and blindfolded with wrists and ankles chained. Number 2, move her into the recreation room. Place her body under the suspension chains. Number 3, stand her up under the chains and lock her wrists well above her head, and continue to verbally abuse her. Number 4, place the neck chain around her neck and lock it in place. It is permanent. Number 5, clip her leg irons to the floor chain. Number 6, use scissors to slowly remove her dress, blouse, or sweater. Cut and remove the bra. Number 7, fondle and abuse her breasts, nipples, and other parts of her body. Number 8, keep her blindfolded to increase disorientation. Use verbal abuse as well. Number 9, slowly unzip, open, and remove the lower clothing. Cut or rip the undergarments off. Number 10, fondle and abuse her sex organs. Continue the verbal abuse. Number 11, attach the overhead suspension straps to her body's ankles, wrists, hips, and upper chest. Number 12, remove the leg irons and tighten the ankle straps, pulling her legs upwards until the middle part of her body is horizontal. The ankle straps will force her legs wide apart. Number 13, tighten and adjust the waist, hip, and chest straps until the middle of the body is straight. Clip the short 4 chain on the bottom ring of the waist belt, and she cannot jerk or lift her body upwards. Number 14, at this point, the captain is suspended at a convenient height, immobilized, and fully exposed. She is uncomfortable, disoriented, and probably terrified. Don't cut her any slack. Continue verbal and physical abuse. Keep her mentally off balance. Pretty much number 15 is rape her and use any kind of instrument or tool to do so. And use a shock machine as well. Number 17 is intensify the fear. Tell her how she's going to be kept as a sex slave. Describe in detail what's going to happen to her and how you are going to abuse her. And number 18 is keep her body suspended for 2 to 3 hours. Then lower the gynecological bench directly beneath her. Lower her body onto the bench. Release one arm or leg at a time and secure it to the bench until she is strapped down. Buckle all the straps on her body until she is totally immobilized. Feet in the stirrups and knees forced wide apart. And those are the 18 commandments that he wrote to basically tell people how to capture and properly subdue and rape captives. So let's talk about the toy box. So the toy box was basically a trailer David Parker Ray had converted into pretty much a prison cell. It was reinforced steel all around. He had cut a hole in it and put an air conditioning unit in it. You're gonna see some pictures of it here in a second. It was literally hundreds and thousands of dollars worth of sex toys, torture devices. The walls were plastered with images of how to inflict pain on individuals without causing any major serious damage or killing them. And in the middle of the toy box was a gynecological chair that he had bought, and then what he did is he rigged up electrodes to it, so if you were strapped in, he also had the ability to shock you. And then he placed mirrors on the ceiling so the person that was strapped into the chair had to see what was being done to them, as well as there was video equipment all around the toy box, so everything was being recorded at all times. He had things like a coffin, a carpeted coffin that he built that he would keep them in. The only use was it to produce snuff films, produce rape and torture films, and keep people captive. So let's talk about accomplices. We already knew Ray's daughter and his girlfriend at the time were accomplices in all this. He had a small network of people that he trusted that bought snuff films from him and bought the films that he made, as well as took part in the rape and torture. You know, in the tape he says, I throw parties regularly where I have my friends come over and you're going to have to, service them, and they're going to use and abuse you as well. So another accomplice he had, his name was Dennis Roy Yancey, and Yancey was another Navy veteran, and so Dennis and Ray basically kidnapped Dennis's girlfriend at the time, threw her in the toy box, torture her, the whole 9 yards. Her disappearance kind of is on the news, so one day Dennis walks in and Ray has a piece of rope and says, you know what you have to do, and they strangle her and end up taking her life and dumping her in the desert. And so one of the reasons he was able to get away with this is because before he would release his victims back into the world, he would use a very, very potent drug cocktail. Some of the things he listed in his tape that he used was sodium pentothal and phenobarbital. And basically for 3 days he would keep them nice and drugged up, and he would just torture them psychologically as well as emotionally, and basically just how he calls it, hypnotize them until they didn't know which way was up or which way was down or where they were, and he would go release them onto some random country road to be found by somebody, and they would think what happened to him was just like a nightmare or a fever dream. So let's talk about David's arrest. So Cindy Vigil, the woman we mentioned at the beginning of the story, was being held captive. Ray goes to work, and Ray's girlfriend, Cindy Hindi, leaves the keys to Vigil's restraints on a nearby table. Vigil takes the initiative, grabs the keys, unlocks her restraints. Miss Hindi comes in, and they get into a giant fight. Vigil ends up grabbing a ice pick off the table and stabs her in the head with it. Doesn't kill her, but gets her pretty good. Enough to where she can get off, and she takes off running down the road, finds a nearby trailer, and bursts in the door and asks for help. And that's when the owners of that trailer call the police. I'm going to see if I can find the 911 call for that, and you can listen to it. But then the police go to Ray's home and enter due to suspicion of, you know, a crime happening, because the woman was covered in blood, had a collar around her neck, and she was naked. And what they find is just absolutely horrifying. They find the toy box. They finally enter the toy box. They find piles and piles of, you know, instruments used for torture, things of that nature. When they finally enter the toy box, they find a cabinet full of VHS tapes, and a couple of investigators pop one in to see what's on them. They witnessed some of the atrocities David Parker Ray inflicted on his victims, to the point where they all had to leave, went outside, and one of the investigators vomited. The torture and pain and nature of the films that he recorded and the things he did to his victims was so awful and so brutal and just absolutely disgusting that one of the FBI agents, Agent Patty Rust, who was also a captain in the Army, she had to go over that footage, make drawings and diagrams of what was taking place in that footage. Well, she did that. She compiled all of the evidence she got, all the drawings, the diagrams, and everything that was on that footage, and after that, she turned it in, went home, and loaded a revolver and shot herself in the head. So another victim was a woman by the name of Kelly Garrett, who was actually a friend of Ray's daughter, Jessie. And one night, Miss Kelly Garrett gets into a fight with her new husband, and she wants to go out and have a drink and decompress. So she goes out with Jessie. She leaves her drink unattended around Jessie, thinking she can trust her because they're friends, you know, they're both women. Jessie drugs her drink, and then Kelly is picked up by David outside the bar and taken and kept in the toy box for a number of days. Ray attempts to kill Kelly by slashing her throat and dumping her somewhere on a country road, but it turns out he didn't actually end up killing her. She is found, and then she goes back to her husband, who thinks that she was cheating on him the entire time, and the cops also believe that as well, and that she, you know, got what she deserved because she was cheating on him. They don't believe any of her stories. She can hardly believe it herself because of the amount of drugs that's been pumped into her system, and nothing ever comes out of it because no one believed her. She could hardly, like I said, she could hardly believe herself. But she was identified by a tattoo on her leg in one of the videos that the FBI found in Ray's possession. David's been arrested. His daughter's been arrested. His girlfriend has been arrested, so everything goes to trial. David is still claiming his innocence because he says it was all for entertainment purposes. No one was ever actually killed. This, that, and the other. Blah 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 blah. Cindy and Yancey, the man, Dennis Yancey, immediately flip on him. They go to the site where they dumped Dennis Yancey's girlfriend, and the body had been moved, so they could never find that body. So they tell David, basically, hey, your daughter is looking at some serious time if you don't start talking to us. So basically, once he hears about his daughter, the amount of trouble his daughter is facing, he starts cooperating, and he is ultimately sentenced to 244 years in prison. His accomplices, Cindy Hindi, who testified against him as well, received a 36-year sentence. So Dennis Roy Yancey was convicted of second-degree murder and conspiracy to commit first-degree murder and was sentenced to 2 15-year sentences. Now, since David really only confessed because he knew his daughter was going to get in a lot of trouble and spend the rest of her life behind bars, she only received a 2-year sentence with 5 years probation for her part in all of the torture, kidnapping, and murders of these women. So for the initial time that David was arrested, it took around 3 years to actually receive that 244-year sentence due to, I believe, a mistrial. But once he received the sentence, he was sentenced to 244 years. He gets finally placed in his final place of where he's going to spend that 244 years. And 8 months into that sentencing, he dies of a heart attack. If I remember correctly, David's daughter is already out of prison, and Dennis Yancey, I believe he was released, but then he was put back in prison for violating his parole. And in July 15th, 2019, Cindy Hindi, David's girlfriend, who also assisted in these kidnappings, torturing, and murders, was released from prison. And that is the story of David Parker Ray, the Toy Box Killer. A truly disgusting and vile man who, in my personal opinion, did not get what he deserved. He deserved so much more. And the whole reason they didn't give him the death penalty in the first place is because the victims wanted him to suffer in prison, which in a whole, he only spent maybe 3 years of his sentence before he had a heart attack. So I hope you guys enjoyed the story. Like I said, down below I'm going to be linking a post bin where you can read the transcript from David's message he would play to his victims when he first captured them. I'll also link a video where you can listen to it if that's more your speed, and then we'll have a link to the 18 commandments that he made for capturing and torturing his victims. I will also link some articles for you to read more about him. There was a lot to go over. I know I didn't cover everything, or we would be here forever. So I'll link my sources so you guys can read more about him. I'm not sure who we're going to cover next week. I was going to get a big old fish bowl and paint it. It's going to be our jar of murder. I'm still going to do it, just didn't get it done this week. And I'm going to take you guys' comments of mysteries, murders, and whatever you want me to cover. I'm going to throw it in there, and then after the end of each episode, we're going to pull one out, and that'll be our murder mystery for next week. I'm not sure who we're covering next week, though. Once I figure out, I will be sure to let you guys know. I will also be having some paranormal videos coming out soon, talking about my personal experiences and experiences in my family and stuff like that. Like I said before, if you have a crime story, something you're proud of, paranormal, something you want to talk about, or just any story in general, email me at snaxtonfanmail@gmail.com, and I will compile a list of the stories and I'll read them on my YouTube videos, I'll read them on a live, I'll read them on my Twitch stream. I really want to hear from you guys, and I love engaging with you. It's my favorite thing about doing this, is being able to talk to you and communicate with you and have one-on-one time with everybody. It would be great if you could give me a like or subscribe. I'll have more coming out. I love engaging with you guys. It's my favorite thing about doing this and being able to talk to you. Write me some stories. I would love to hear them. Send them to snaxtonfanmail@gmail.com. I hope to see you guys back next week. Be safe out there. Wear a mask. I love you guys so much. And have a good one.